Okay, so we've got a few people that you may recognize in the feature match area this round. On the right of our screen, we've got Josh Utter-Leyton, Tom Martell, and David Ochoa of Channel Fireball. On the left of our screen, James Nguyen, Tom Hutson, and Ryan Ward. They've been in the feature match area already, so we've seen a little bit of their decks. We're starting off here with Tom Martell against Tom Hutson, the Tom mirror, if you will, but clearly not a mirror in terms of what kind of decks are being played. On the right of our screen, Tom Martell starting off with a Welkin turn, whereas Hutson starting off with a Landmar Oasis, making it very clear what colours he's in, because he's casting an Elvish Mystic on turn 1, and now he's got green and black mana, able to cast a Necromancer's Assistant on turn 2, and this is the full-on graveyard plan.
Oh yeah, this is an exact color mirror match that we saw from last round. In fact, we saw Tom's, or so I should say Hutson's green-black deck in the last round. It's one of the more impressive green-black decks I've seen. Multiple Satyr Wayfinders, the Necromancer's Assistant, many ways to interact with those cards in the graveyard. It's absolutely fantastic.
I mean, the draft deck that's been championed by the once and future King of the Hill, Andrea Mengucci, who I've been speaking to a number of his team members, is apparently just the master of it. I'm really hoping that we might at some point see some kind of a breakdown on how to build and play that deck from Mengucci somewhere on the internet at some point. In the meantime, though, we get to see Inferno Fists on a Welkin turn. Doesn't really have arms, doesn't really have fists. Flavor-wise, I'm not sure it works, but gameplay-wise, it seems to be doing very well for Tom Martell there. First off, letting the Welkin turn attack for 4, then it kills off Elvish Mystic. Nice play.
Very important, because you might notice that Hutson didn't play a third land. He was on that Elvish Mystic as a source of mana, and oh, sorry, he's on the draw. My mistake. So that still prevents him from getting out a little too quickly. The green decks have an opportunity to put out a lot of stuff very quickly, and in a deck that has Convoke cards as well, making sure that there aren't as many opportunities to tap creatures for mana is something that Tom's going to want to make sure that he keeps them.
Hornet Queen there being sent to the graveyard by Satyr Wayfinder, on its way finding a land for Tom Hutson. We don't yet know quite how much Hutson has in terms of ability to get that Hornet Queen back from his graveyard. If he can, obviously not too big a loss. Otherwise, he might be feeling the sting of that one.
Yeah, in the previous round, we saw Gravedigger, which you can see sitting at the top of his graveyard right now. We also saw Unmake the Graves. We didn't actually see
Restock?
Well, actually, I don't remember if we saw Restock. I know we didn't see Endless Obedience. Not to mean he doesn't have one. He did peel through a lot of his deck, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him have something to interact with it and get it back relatively soon.
Hunt the Weak there, allowing for the Satyr Wayfinder to trade off with Amphin Pathmage before the Pathmage could cause too much trouble on this board. Meanwhile, Necromancer's Assistant and Welkin turn trading blows. That is until a big roadblock comes down there for Tom Martell.
Nimbus of the Isle.
Yeah, 3/3 flyer for 5. Perfectly serviceable. I mean, it's the sort of thing that actually, of the 3/3 flyers for 5 in history, this is probably among the weaker ones contextually, just because, I mean, you've got your likes of Necrogen Scudder at 3 mana doing the same sort of thing, and it's just not necessarily something that has a really clear fit in a strong archetype where you can get loads of synergy.
So there's the Unmake the Graves we were talking about earlier. He did in fact find it and uses it to get back a Soul of Zendikar and that Hornet Queen. So looks to me like he's going to have plenty of ways to pester his opponent in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, Soul of Zendikar, a massively powerful threat once you've got the mana to start playing around with its abilities. I'm guessing he's going to start off with Hornet Queen here, assuming that he's got the appropriate mana. Though actually, Landmar Oasis is his third green source, so that's going to work out. The Queen, just a very, very strong rare to play out because it's something that's quite difficult for your opponent to just easily answer it with one card.
Yeah, with 2 swamps in his hand, he has the ability to go Soul of Zendikar on turn 6 into Hornet Queen on turn 7, manage to get them on back-to-back turns. It's going to be very, very difficult to deal with.
And I think I'd probably start off with the Queen, to be honest. Oh, sorry, I'm messing up my my mana costs here. Yeah, the 6 into 7, perfect curve. Meanwhile, Borderland Marauder from Tom Martell, the 1/2 on defense, but attacking for 3 with a +2 power when it attacks. A nice addition to him, and one that's putting Tom Hutson under a lot of pressure on just 6 life. Absolutely forced here to start committing probably a number of creatures to the board, really, because I mean, he's facing 5 damage in the air here.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty big beating because one of his green mana sources is a Llanowar Waste, and even if he were, and into the, that's going to absolutely take care of it. So into the void, make sure that the creatures go away. And yeah, that he never got an opportunity to get that Hornet Queen online. So as much as she can stabilize the game when she hits play, it does you very little good if you are that close to death.
So effectively there, a lot of his self-mill, while if the game had gone longer, it would have set him up to do some very, very powerful things. All it really did was give Tom Martell more information.
Yeah, that Inferno Fist activation early on by Martell was absolutely crucial in that game.
As it turns out, yeah, killing off Elvish Mystic meant that the removal of the one creature in play there slowed down Hutson just enough that Tom Martell was able to apply appropriate levels of beatings. I mean, given it was on a Welkin turn, he probably didn't want to leave it on there for too long anyway, because you don't really want to set up a situation where your opponent can kill your creature, get rid of your enchantment as well if you just don't have the mana on tap to activate it.
Yeah. This is a very interesting matchup, considering the long game of Hutson is very, very strong. Like, he has incredible large number of endgame threats, and there's also a reasonable amount of bounce out of Martell's match. So if Martell is able to keep those bigger threats off the table, he might actually be able to put himself in a situation where his flyers can finish the job before that late game gets online.
So here we see Josh Utter-Leyton up against James Nguyen. So Josh Utter-Leyton here, he's got a little combo going on. So that Soulmender, which has got marked by Honor, so it's got Vigilance, it's a 3/3. After attacking, it can tap to cause Josh to gain a life, which, you know, in and of itself, not necessarily always that exciting. But with Ajani's Pridemate in play, every time he gains a life, he's able to make that Pridemate just a little bit bigger. And it now a 5/5. Pretty soon it's going to be able to favorably match up against the Juggernaut that's on James Wayne's side of the board.
I'm really curious what that Phyrexian Revoker on Wynn's side is naming. Like, I'd imagine, considering the fact that there is a green mana tap, like with the green mana tap, like it's likely that elf came into play this most recent turn. But then again, if the Soulmender is tapped, it's likely that that's been tapped for its activated abilities. So, all right,
Covenant of Blood here, killing off the Soulmender. But yeah, I think there's a very real chance that the Sunblade Elf is going to be the thing that was named by Phyrexian Revoker, depending on the amount of information James Wayne had at that exact point in the game.
All right, so that 5/5 on Utter-Leyton's side is going to match up fairly strongly against the 5/3 that must attack on Wynn's side. But it looks like with Utter-Leyton having the lead that he's got, that Juggernaut's must attack every single turn is going to be an even more poignant drawback.
Yeah, there's times that you want to be attacking, there's times that you don't, and right now James Wayne would almost certainly rather that he had a few more creatures to hold back with, because this is a big attack from Josh Utter-Leyton. He's got the mana able to activate that Sunblade Elf, so he can pay 5 mana in order to give his entire squad +1/+1, and that means that he's going from having a 2/2, a 2/3, and a 5/5 to a lethal team.
Absolutely. That'll be very interesting. At this point, Cone of Flame, we saw a copy of that, I believe, in Wynn's Graveyard. It's a great card to kind of dig himself out of this situation, but he's still, even if he manages to somehow get rid of the creatures that are on the table, getting rid of that 5/5 is going to be really, really tough. It's going to involve multiple turns and or multiple cards. Yeah,
Thundering Giant in James Wayne's hand, that's sort of a good card, but one that's just a tiny bit small for this situation. And now Wayne taking a fairly substantial hit there, down to just 4 life. So it's not as if all the creatures that Josh has in play are lethal, but none of them are far from it.
No, and at 19 life, there's nothing that Wynn's going to be able to do. So Josh Utter-Leyton managed to secure a second win for his team.
So yeah, that's 2 wins to the team on Channel Fireball's side of things. We see an 8 by both Josh Utter-Leyton and Tom Martell's name. That means that at the moment they're absolutely tied up for top 25 pro rankings. Josh dropped more at the Pro Tour than Tom did. So Tom dropped just 1 place, Josh dropped 4 places. Both still in the top 10 players in the world, though, and on the same team. A pretty terrifying set of players to play against. Here, though, we see David Ochoa on the right of our screen. He up against Ryan Ward, and we've got green-black on the other side of the table this time against blue-white for Ryan Ward.
This appears to be a nice aggressive start from Ochoa. Is that, I believe that the Netcaster Spider, a Gargoyle Sentinel, is that an invasive species?
It is, yes.
Super.
Triplicate Spirits here from Ryan Ward, though, potentially a little bit problematic. Enabled very, very well there from the Coral Barrier that got Ryan Ward a few extra creatures, but that Coral Barrier potentially a little bit of a liability at this point because it is sitting there with a stab wound, meaning that if Ochoa just contents himself with attacking in the air with his Gargoyle, then basically that's just 2 extra free damage that's sat on the board each turn for David Ochoa, and with Ryan on just 6 life, this Covenant of Blood likely to just end the game.
And that it does. Yep.
So game 1's a sweep for the Channel Fireball team. We've seen players sweeping up their cards in pretty rapid succession, falling like dominoes there on the other side of the table. Josh Utter-Leyton, Tom Martell, David Ochoa, they picked up 1 loss, but you know, you can make day 2 with 2 losses. You don't necessarily want to give away too much, though.
You can tell that Martell has his game face on because he's no longer wearing his sweet aviator prescription sunglasses.
Yeah, the story there apparently that his other glasses have been mislaid or broken, and such that the only prescription lenses he has available to him are those sunglasses. They're a little bit reflective, though, and so basically he's concerned that he doesn't want his opponent to see the cards in his hand. So he's told me that, yep, while I'm in the feature match area, or, you know, in the tournament area anyway, playing Magic, there's just going to be a whole lot of squinting going on.
As opposed to squidding, which is something that might happen in the near future with that Chasm Skulker slowly starting to creep up in power and toughness.
Yeah, so Chasm Skulker, a really interesting card. Every time Tom Martell draws a card, a +1/+1 counter goes on the Chasm Skulker. In the event that the Chasm Skulker gets killed off, you know, however that may be, then all of a sudden, for each +1/+1 counter on the Skulker, Tom Martell is going to get a 1/1 Island Walking Squid. Now, the Island Walk's not too relevant, but a massive horde of 1/1s is none too shabby.
No, especially considering the large number of seemingly chaff creatures that Tom Hutson has in his deck. Like those Satyr Wayfinders, they serve multiple purposes in his deck, but at some point, they're just going to be creatures that he can use to attack or creatures that he can use to block. And if he gets rid of that Chasm Skulker and Tom managed to fill his board up with a bunch of 1/1s, they're going to be able to defend him for an extended period of time. Although that Amphin Path Mage does a wonderful job of comboing with the ever-growing Chasm Skulker, providing a much larger and increasingly powerful source of damage for him.
Yeah, the Chasm Skulker likely to be growing by, at least 1 point a turn just from the natural card draw at the start of the turn. If there's a Divination, if there's a Jace's Ingenuity, you know, anything from Tom Martell to draw extra cards is potentially a massive problem for Tom Hutson, and we can see a Divination in Martell's hand, so potentially next turn that Chasm Skulker, even if there's not the mana to make it unblockable, it might functionally become such just by being gigantic and a difficult creature to really deal with anyway.
I think that we get a pretty nice glimpse of an Endless Obedience in Tom Hutconson's hand, which is one of those cards that we weren't quite sure whether he actually had because we hadn't seen it yet, but I kind of guessed that he would have with the number of graveyard self-mill cards that he has. This is going to be... Oh, so Tom opts to go ahead and trade off his Amphin Path Mage with the Child of Night, recognizing he's probably going to be using his mana for other things. That activated ability is not going to be terribly relevant in the near future, but...
So the Rotfeaster Maggot there, a big play for Tom Hutson, able to gain him a little bit of life, present a blocker that's actually big enough to rumble with Chasm Skulker, at least on the face of things, until this Divination happens. Well, you know, I've got a 5/5 now. So that's going to be able to attack pretty successfully here. And that before Martell potentially plays any other threats.
I think he's got a Frost Lynx in his hand too, and an Into the Void, so... Unfortunately, I don't know if the Into the Void is one of those cards. It's not a tremendously great card in this matchup, actually, because most of Hutson's cards comes into play effects that are highly relevant in this matchup.
What might be slightly better in Tom Martell's hand, it looks like there's a Scuttling Doom Engine that's just 1 mana off getting cast.
Oh my my.
And the Doom Engine, aptly named, a 6/6 for 6 that, you know, potentially might trade with that Soul of Zendikar on the other side of the board.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, if it does die, that's 6 damage to the face. And 6 is, you know, even with Tom Hutson on 23, 6 is an awful lot to just casually take. Yeah,
this is going to be, this is actually not looking too hot for Tom right now. Admittedly, his Chasm Skulker...
Martell or Hutson?
Sorry, good point, Martell. His Chasm Skulker is going to be growing every turn, but I mean, Hutson might actually be able to just stop casting creatures at this point and start pounding out beasts. Without that Amp and Path Mage in play, that Chasm Skulker doesn't have a clear avenue of attack, and as long as Hutson's got those Satyr Wayfinders back to kind of chump for a few turns, he can turn out a large attacking force that's going to be able to take Martell down in very short order.
Yeah, it may well be that Tom Martell has to sort of stop and think back on this game and say, maybe I should have held on to the Path Mage just a little longer. Even though he's got two massive threats on the board, two very, very influential rares, it may well be that they're not actually able to work particularly well against the board that Tom Hutson has been able to piece together here.
Yeah, it's going to be especially dangerous if Hutson does manage to actually get rid of that Scuttling Doom Engine after having dealt even a small amount of more damage to Martell. Hutson's got that Endless Obedience, which you can always use to reanimate that Scuttling Doom Engine, and that's going to present a nasty 6 points flat at Martell's head.
Yeah, I mean, even though Tom Martell has been presenting these 6/6 threats, I think he might be in a situation where he can dish it out, but he can't take it.
Yeah.
If it works out that the Scuttling Doom Engine does come into play for Tom Hutson, then he's going to be able to one that really applies extra pressure with it, and that could be a big problem. At the moment, Hutson quite happy to say, I've got this mana, I've got this Soul of Zendikar, I can kind of play around for a bit and see what you do. I mean, even though that there's some fairly powerful cards in Tom Martell's hand, he does have sort of the option to cast Into the Void and bounce 2 tokens potentially, which are good creatures to bounce always.
Yep.
It's not really a massively great spot for him.
No. Alright, so he goes ahead and makes the mana play, forces Hutson to make himself a 3/3 beast in response, and he's going to have to return the 6 mana and the 5 mana creatures he has in play to his hand, leaving him with a hilariously insignificant board. That beast is a creature that's capable of blocking the Scuttling Doom Engine, which otherwise would have been unblockable. But the combination of all of his creatures in play isn't enough to deal enough combat damage to kill that Chasm Skulker. So it looks like Martell's got a free attack with both of his creatures.
And an Inferno Fist on top here. I mean, realistically, I don't know if that to me looks like a play to just maximize his use of mana over the next few turns.
Oh, certainly. I mean, he was telegraphing that was what his intent was with that Into the Void. He wanted to make sure that in order to get back into it, Hutson was going to have to spend as much mana as possible to reset things to where they were, and he himself is going to have an opportunity to absolutely use all of his mana to its fullest too.
The chat wondering whether or not there's a Shrapnel Blast for his own Scuttling Doom Engine for the Mondo combo of 11 damage to the face. I'm not sure if that's quite where Tom Martell's going, though. Shrapnel Blast kind of at its best in red-blue. But regardless, I mean, he's got some very, very powerful creatures in play at the moment anyway. And looking through the graveyard of Tom Hutson here, he's got a huge amount of information such that if it does end up going to Game 3, he can sideboard with virtually perfect information.
Yeah. So Martell's actually gotten himself into a fairly reasonable position at this point, where he's got a bunch of big dudes. Those 2 big dudes that are actually capable of killing off that Soul of Zendikar in combat, which he is more than willing to do, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
The one downside is that we know that there's an Endless Obedience hanging out in Hutson's hand. And Tom has gotten rid of his Into the Void, which would have been an exceptional way to make sure that any creatures that come back into play don't stay there for long.
I mean, you say he's got rid. It looks like he's got another Amphin Path Mage here, which is going to be a big pickup.
That is a beating. That would also help explain why he got rid of the one earlier. If he had that second one in his hand for the entire time, the first one becomes much more expendable.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not a huge amount of upside in having multiples, but this turn he might play the Frost Links, tap down that Soul of Zendikar, meaning that Scuttling Doom Engine simply won't be able to be blocked.
Yes.
Chasm Skulker will eat something almost certainly.
Oh, yes.
I mean, the timing is very important here. Basically, he's working on a tempo plan for now, trying to get through points of damage, but he's got to deal 23 damage, which is loads and loads of damage that he's got to get through in the next few turns before Hutson is able to do too much.
Unfortunately, I mean, just a simple addition of Scuttling Doom Engine plus the Inferno Fist that it's got on it, if he can manage to get rid of the Scuttling Doom Engine at some point, that's representing an 8-point swing right now, plus 2 more damage making 10 total, and then 6 extra damage. He's only 7 damage off with just what he's got on board right now, or potentially just one more attack from the Doom Engine of having things at lethal.
So, kind of telegraphed how the combat step was going to go. That Satyr Wayfinder, it was just a matter of which Satyr Wayfinder was going to die, but one of them was absolutely running under the bus that is the Chasm Skulker, currently an 8-8 after 7 successive cards drawn by Tom Martell without an answer coming from Tom Hutson.
It's always the one on the right. So that Scuttling Doom Engine, the 6 damage from that, it might not even necessarily matter. If he gets the Path Mage into play and can just target that Chasm Skulker once, that's basically it. At that point, Hutson can no longer attack and is facing a 1-turn clock from the Chasm Skulker and the Path Mage as a combination.
And of course, there is the thing that if for whatever reason Tom finds a way of killing, Tom Hutson finds a way of killing off that Chasm Skulker, 7 squids? That's a lot of squids.
Either block or swarm, no matter what, you're going to be able to get through. That's the one thing, is early on in the game, Chasm Skulker's not that great, but if you can last, or get him to last for this entire point of the game, things just get nasty and fast. A
number of people in our chat have been suggesting quite how powerful the Chasm Skulker is going to be in Legacy. There where you can just sort of say, I'm going to cast Brainstorm, draw 3 cards, pump my Chasm Skulker. Island Walk, very, very powerful in that format if it gets killed off.
Any players who've ever played Grow before know exactly how powerful stuff like that is. I mean, this might actually be stronger than Quirion Dryad ever was in that format. So,
which is saying something.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, on this match, we have Tom Hutson trying to solve the Rubik's Cube that is his deck. There's all sorts of cards that are relevant in various different zones. The Elvish Mystic, a fresh addition to his graveyard after the Inferno Fist kills it off, and now he's saying, right, I've got 9 mana. I could activate Soul of Zendikar. I can get something back from my graveyard. I have all of these options available to me. I can eat something from a graveyard to gain some life with my Maggot, but is that really going to be the most powerful thing that I can do this turn, given it's going to have to block and die the following turn? It's a complicated problem, not one that I'd have to want to have to work out.
All right, so Scavenger is going to come down and be fairly large. What are we looking at, a 6/6 itself?
Not too many creatures in Tom Martell's graveyard, but that not really a problem because the green-black deck doesn't really like to rely on there being loads of things in other graveyards when it can just do it to its own graveyard. So yeah, a 6/6. Yeah, suddenly we have a fight on our hands.
The Rotbeaster Maggot is going to play a very key role here. If depending on what Martell does with his attack, if he just ticks up the Chasm Skulker and plays the, I think he has a Jason's Ingenuity in his hand, hilariously. But I think if the Anthem Path Mage comes down and is able to just give the Chasm Skulker unblockability and attack in, that's probably his best decision here, because he is going to be in some serious trouble facing down the, I don't want to say serious trouble, but if he ends up getting rid of that Scuttling Doom Engine and taking that hit for 6, actually, no, that would be lethal.
Yeah.
Because with the extra point of damage, it makes a Chasm Skulker a 9/9. So,
yeah, I think that making an unblockable Chasm Skulker here is just the right plan. But one of the great things about Tom Martell to me is that just because the play is obvious does not mean he's just going to jump into it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times that the obvious play is the right play, and the reason it's obvious is because it's just objectively correct.
Yeah, I don't think Martell's got a 7th land, unfortunately, so looks like that plan is off. I think he'll probably just attack him with there, see what happens, depending on whether he blocks or not, maybe Ingenuity mid-combat.
Yeah, I mean, Ingenuity would make it into a 12/12.
Yeah.
As it is, Satyr Wayfinder says, I'm going the same way as my buddy.
Yep. So the question here becomes, does Martell bother to play the Path Mage now and leave it susceptible to removal spells, like Covenant of Blood, or does he keep it in his hand so that he can play it and activate it all in one turn?
It looks like he's got another plan. 5 mana.
That's an Ingenuity.
There we go. 3 more cards. Let's see what they hold. That looks like a Soul of Chandelier.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this match of Magic before.
I'm pretty sure I've seen where this is going. And the answer is it's not going to go particularly well for Hutson.
Yeah, we've learned the lesson that Soul of Chandelier greater than Soul of Zendikar when it comes to the fight.
I mean, Chandelar is a plane that I have a lot of time for.
I love Chandelar.
And we can see that other matches going on. It looks like James Nguyen has squared up his match against Josh Utter-Leyton. That now 1-1. Ryan Ward's still playing against David Ochoa, so we'll wait to see how that one goes. Certainly not in the bag for the team from Channel Fireball. I mean, we know that we've already seen this team on the other side of the table putting up a good fight in the feature match area.
Oh, certainly.
And, I mean, this green-black sealed deck, I think would represent a perfectly reasonable template for how you want to be drafting your green-black decks.
Oh, 100%.
Assuming you can get there.
I mean, this is basically, obviously it's a version of the deck on steroids, but it shows you basically what the key interactions in the deck are. The Satyr Wayfinder is just an absolutely beast at filling the graveyard up and acts as a wonderful convoke outlet for the many convoke spells that the black cards use to get cards back from the graveyard, like the Endless Obedience and the other one called Empty the Graves.
Yeah, I mean, basically, don't focus on the rares would be my only point in terms of trying to work out how to draft this deck, because the rares will happen or they won't. Focus on how powerful the synergies are between the assorted commons and uncommons on Tom Hutson's side of the board.
Yeah.
That's something that you can reasonably be looking to achieve in any draft game. And if you want to jump on Magic Online right now, you will be able to draft a deck that is enacting the same plan as this, even if it's not using exactly the same cards in at every turn.
But it is important to mind the beef. You've got to make sure that while you do all this cool, cutesy, tricksy stuff, you've got to have ways to actually kill your opponents, where cards like Undergrowth Scavenger, which we currently see attacking alongside the Soul of Zendikar, the cards like that are so important in this match.
Yeah, and actually, Death Touch creatures can be pretty important as well, just to buy you the time to get there.
Yep.
But in this exact case, Tom Hutson saying, you know, I've got these big fat monsters, I'm going to come in with them. The interesting thing is here that, to me, he's kind of saying, I don't mind if I trade off with your Scuttling Doom Engine, because I know that I kind of want to get it out of your graveyard and into play. I'll take my hits because it's going to work out for me. What he doesn't know is quite what he's going to be facing next turn from Tom Martell.
Yeah. Assuming... Yeah, Hutson's got a couple of options here. The most reasonable one is to just munch it with the Rotfeaster Maggot, but it's entirely possible he takes another out and decides he's going to reanimate the Scuttling Doom Engine with his Endless Obedience. I seriously doubt that's the play, but... Alright, so it looks like they're going to go ahead and trade that off.
Stoke the Flames there from Tom. That throws off the math just a little bit.
Yep.
It looks like that Stoke the Flames might well have been to the face.
I believe it was.
That plus Scuttling Doom Engine, that's 10 damage that Tom Hutson has taken in one fell swoop.
So it's not quite Shrapnel Blast.
Yeah, sorry chat. We'll let Tom know that we're not quite happy with that one.
Yeah.
Like, he could have done better. We'll give him like a B-.
I'll give him a B-.
It's still a pass. It's definitely a pass.
His problem is that he's not wearing his sunglasses right now, so he clearly didn't see that play.
Yeah, he was squinting at it. As far as he was concerned, it pretty much looked the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, cool plays are that much cooler with your sunglasses on.
All right.
As it is, though, we're pretty confident we're going to see something cool from Tom Martell next turn. He's got plenty going on.
Oh, man. It looks like Josh Utter-Leyton, Raptor himself, has taken the first match for his side over James Nguyen.
Ochoa chilling out. He's still currently in his second game as well. I mean, one of the nice things is that if you're the slow player on a team in a team competition, sometimes you just don't even need to finish your match. Your teammates are like, don't worry, you won. And you're like, really? Brilliant. Yeah. Go off and get some food. Lovely stuff.
I mean, it is the never-ending struggle of good versus evil. Ochoa manning the side of good.
So on just 5 life, I feel like the Rotfeaster Maggot suddenly becomes a much more attractive option.
Yep.
Eats the Scuttling Doom Engine. I'll take that 6 life. Thank you very much. Back to 11, which in principle seems pretty good. In practice, we know it might not be quite good enough.
Well, when you've got a possibility of a 13-13 Chasm Skulker attacking unblocked on the next turn, bad things can potentially happen.
It's an unlucky number, but not for Tom Martell. I mean, the thing I like about Chasm Skulker is it's just this constant reminder to your opponent of how many cards you've drawn.
Yeah.
It's just the visual rub-ins of exactly how many spells you cast to draw cards. So the 6 that's on the Chasm Skull card, that's legitimately how many turns it's been in play for.
Yeah.
The 5, that's a Jace's Ingenuity and a Divination up that Tom Martell is in terms of raw cards. Now, while there's been all sorts of sneaky business with Gravediggers and such like from Tom Hutson, it's not quite the same as just, you know, tapping an island and various other things and drawing a card. And Tom Martell here just sort of throwing down Amphin Pathmage and going, look, I don't really care about any of these cards, I'm drawing anything else. This is how I'm going to win the game. And Tom Hutson says, well, fair enough, that does win the game. I guess that means you guys win the match. Meanwhile, David Ochoa looks across and goes, oh, you guys are both ranked number 8 in the world. Also, I don't need to play anymore. Thanks. Congratulations there to Josh Utter-Leyton, Tom Martell and David Ochoa.